Hello there. Just a few thoughts for today, really, and it's mainly about what I sense about our country, essentially, and things it's going through. You do feel that certain things have changed and moved across certain lines, but that's not to say. But things are always constantly shifting. Um, you know, I'm sure everyone's kind of aware of where our country's been going in terms of curtailment of freedom of speech and things like that, and the fact that we have a what's been characterised as a two-tier system of governance and a two-tier legal system, and that's all. I think entirely obvious that that's actually what's happened, and I think that's been kind of like covertly so for a considerable amount of time, and I think people have been aware of that, but it's been kept on the sort of like on it's been kept simmering, and the way people are in Britain, they kind of like they just accept an awful lot of things for a very long time, but they won't accept things forever. Um, and At the moment, we have a Labour government, and they have a particular kind of arrogance, which is very much the kind of like the preserve of the ideologically certain. Yeah. Um, and when they came in, they decided to go for broke. It seems in terms of their sort of their kind of like revamped, but still very much socialist plans. They're globalists, they're socialists, they're Fabians, and that's something I'll return to. And after last year's disturbances following the Southport massacre, um, in which people sort of like people's frustrations over so many things broke out, they responded just dreadfully. They responded with a doubling down on vilification. Rather than listening to people, they just went for broke and decided that they would imprison people and weaponize the judiciary to sort of like fast track people into sentences which were quite absurd and appalling. Yeah, and obviously they do have control of the media, largely at least of the legacy media. They have a dominance of the legacy media. There's very little that gets past that. There's a few that are getting past it. But they have that. The legacy media is basically their propaganda arm. It's part of an emergent kind of state authority. And Yeah, well, they've just carried on like that, really. That was a shock for people to see that happening. Um, but people have continued to push back against it. Yeah. Um, so that's all. It's good. But it's a number. There's a number of things that have occurred. Things have become conscious which were unconscious before. And so people have realised exactly, just as they started to do after the Brexit vote, and people started to see basically how we, as who felt like just the ordinary people of this country, how we were actually viewed. It was made very, very clear. Um, and that's accelerated that whole process. And so now we have a number of things happening. People realise that we actually have a government that hates us, which is an expression of an entire class that hates us, and that lies freely and openly, that has control of media, that has control of the police force, that has control of the judiciary. Yeah, people have understood this now. And they're starting to pick up on how this works, you know. And a number of things have become sort of diffused through alternative media. So people started to understand how our constitution was undermined from Tony Blair onwards. They've started to understand the way that our constitution has been undermined, and the way that democracy has been undermined, and that the people who rule us actually require democracy to be undermined because they're globalists and because they don't want to have representative national democracy. So they understand that. They understand where we lie in relation to that. They've started to also understand this thing about the Fabian Society and how influential it's been, and how sinister, really, in terms of anybody who doesn't believe in their particular program, you know. And we see how they've managed to sort of like spread their tendrils throughout everything. As somebody once said, this isn't a conspiracy theory, it's actually just a literal conspiracy. That's, you know, you've got an organization whose original symbol was a wolf in sheep's clothing. There's not much sheep's clothing left now. And the fact that George Orwell named 1984 because the Fabian Society was founded in 1884, and he thought it would maybe take them 100 years to get there. Yeah. So people are saying things like that, you know. But the other thing, because there has been this whole thing about the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, which have been facilitated and covered up by all sorts of people in positions that should have actually protected the population and protected the girls who were abused and trafficked as children, because people have become aware of that, and they've seen this increasing treatment of Islam as a favoured religion and a favoured ideology, by the very government which despises them, and they've seen it protected, and there have been numerous attempts to bring that in, sort of protections, you know, with definitions of Islamophobia, a term which was actually coined by the Muslim Brotherhood as a cover for basically neutralizing objection to the political goals of political Islam. And what's happened through all of this, through these things, plus all the stuff with the migrant hotels and things like that, and the attacks by migrants upon the indigenous population, with all of this happening, the national psyche has registered doctrinal Islam as its enemy, and that's not fanciful. It's not talking about individual Muslims. It's not talking about all kinds of people. It's talking about doctrine, and an essentially and intrinsically political doctrine. And you do find, of course, you might find the apologists and the so-called liberal do-gooders will all go on about, oh, what about Christianity? What about Christianity? Yeah, well, look, that's not what we live with now. We don't live with a medieval form of Christianity. Unfortunately, when people talk about reformist Islam, well, the trouble is that fundamentalist Islam is the reform of Islam. That is the reformist Islam. That's your problem. So people have recognized that. Now, this wouldn't be such a problem if we hadn't had such corrupt governments who have basically both invited these particular communities in. And I mean, not all Muslim communities are the same, yeah, but they haven't. If it hadn't been for the inviting in of these communities and they're allowing them to be to form their own semi-autonomous centres, yeah, of population, yeah, which actually has happened, yeah. If it hadn't been for things like that, this wouldn't be such a problem, yeah. But as we know, that's exactly what's happened, and so we really do have a problem, and people understand it now. And the way out of that is not not clear for people who value a supposedly liberal and tolerant society. But the fact is, there's no point being liberal and tolerant if you're allowing people who aren't tolerant to gain power. That's stupid, yeah. And there, of course, is a lot of discussion about this, about about these various things. I mean, it's, from the point of view of our latest waves of illegal immigration, it's obviously very simple. These people have broken the law. They've broken into the country. They should be deported. That should be all there is to it. That's just the tip of the iceberg, to be truthful, in terms of the sort of social problems that we have that have developed. But there are many, many things which could be done to actually at least stem the problem of the feeding of communities which have an enmity towards our own country and our own culture. So there are various things which I'm sure could be done about that, and people have become aware of that. So that's another big thing that has happened. And these shifts, you can feel them, yeah. Now, things like the Raising the Colours campaign, with people putting up flags of the various nations of this country, and by that I mean obviously England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and the Union flag. People putting up these has been. It's been an instinctive response to what has been done to us. Everyone knows, especially with the St. George's Cross. Everyone knows what the establishment thinks of this, and they think of us. And so these flags are basically a sign to say, we're not cowed. And that's what people are saying by that. They're saying that your attempts to silence us, to imprison us, and to just basically tread us into the ground have not worked. So that's basically what that's all about. They are signs of a shift, though, and the shift has occurred. And then, of course, we had the enormous march in London last weekend, which was led by Tommy Robinson. Absolutely enormous, which of course was immediately put down as being far right, etc., etc. Violent. This is absolute garbage. Yeah, you can just look at the arrest figures, comparing that, which was, I would say, about 1 million. I would say it was about 1 million people. It could have been more, a bit more or less. I don't know, but I would estimate about 1 million. I think that's a good estimate. I don't know if it was 24 or 26 arrests. Yeah. There were hundreds of arrests at the Notting Hill Carnival. There were even more arrests at the pro-Palestinian, in support of terrorist organizations march, It's absolutely absurd. But of course, yet again, Starmer comes out with his jackbooted incapacity to read the room. Yeah. With his kind of like statements about things. They all do, you know. So we have this sort of thing. Now, it's really, it's honestly a very, very big problem. Don't know where things go from here right now. Apart from that, obviously people shouldn't despair or give up. I'm quite certain that the establishment will do everything it can to try and drive things back again, and to respond with even more authoritarianism. I think that's probably, well, almost certainly, it's what they'll do. It's all they can do. It's all they know. Yeah. These are really old-fashioned socialists at heart, and they feel that they really have the upper hand, and they feel that they really have pretty much clinched the deal. But I would say that they have actually peaked too soon, and that their arrogance will be their undoing eventually. Unfortunately, they are causing an awful lot of trouble in the meantime. So, well, that's just my kind of reflections. For now, things have shifted, and things they're kind of partially on the move. They're sort of partially on the move in some ways. So, something has shifted on the ground, though, very definitely amongst people. And that sort of a shift does not go away. It's glacial. It's a glacial movement. It's taken a long time to get here. And the response of the authoritarians will be, we have to punish people for this because obviously it can't possibly be a natural thing that's happened. It must be some sort of a conspiracy by far-right extremists, etc., etc. Because that's all that they can think and all that they can see. They're that stupid. They really are. But it's a glacial movement. It's an enormous mass has moved. It's moved slowly, but it's moving. And there's nothing they can do about that, in fact. So, anyway, that's all for today.